Hi, I'm Louise Wood and I co-lead the NIHR, and I'm really delighted to be supporting the UK's first Dementia Researcher Careers Festival.
To be successful nowadays in science, you need diversity. You need people from all kinds of walks of life.
We know that for every scientist working in dementia research, there are 4 scientists working in cancer research.
We want to supercharge the next generation of scientists to make the much-needed breakthroughs in both the understanding and intervention in the diseases that cause dementia.
And we have no treatments. We have treatments for cancer, we have treatments for heart disease, but we don't have treatments for the undignified death of dementia.
So nowadays you need chemists, biologists, mathematicians, bioinformaticians, medical doctors, psychologists.
So please think seriously about how you can bring your talents and insights into tackling this awful disease.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this healthcare professional webinar. My name is Rebecca Dove. I'm the Senior Programme Manager for the NIHR Doctoral Fellowship, and I work at the NIHR Academy, and I will be your chair for this session. This session is being delivered as part of the Dementia Research Careers Festival, and it is the last formal session of the week. The session will be recorded and is available online on the Dementia Researcher website, along with the other sessions that we've also run this week. We also have blogs, podcasts, and guidance on how to get into dementia research. This can be found at www.dementiaresearcher.nihr.ac.uk/careers. So this session will cover an overview of the NIHR Academy and our fellowships that are relevant to you. Dementia is a research priority for NIHR in 2021, and it has been added as a highlight notice. We are encouraging applications from researchers working within this space. We are going to hear from 4 fantastic researchers who come from a variety of fields of study and who are at varying stages within their careers. Our speakers will share with you their career journey and their experience and contribution to dementia research. We also have a Q&A session planned for the end, where you have the option to ask questions. I know that there are a number of viewers today watching this session on both Zoom and YouTube, and I would like to remind you that you can post your questions at any time using the Q&A and comment section on your screen. If you would like your question to be directed to a specific speaker, please include their name along with your questions, and then we will answer the questions at the end of the session. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to our speakers today. So I will start the session giving an overview on the NIHR Academy. Dr. Anna Volkmer, who is a speech and language dementia researcher from the University of College London, she has completed an NIHR doctoral fellowship. Dr. Emily Oliver is lead nurse for dementia from Portsmouth Hospital University Trust. She has completed an NIHR clinical doctoral fellowship. Annabelle Long is a physiotherapist and PhD student at Nottingham University. She is studying for a PhD via our NIHR Applied Research collaborations with East Midlands. And we lastly have Clive Thomas, who's a mental health nurse and a DProf student who works for both Swansea Bay University Health Board and Swansea University. I will start the session today by giving you a presentation on the NIHR Academy and the schemes available for you. So hopefully you can all see that. So as I've briefly said, so my name is Rebecca Dove and I work.
Sorry, Rebecca, we've got slide presenter view, not.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Adam. Is that better?
It is, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll just pull up my presenter view because that's not working now. Perfect. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the schemes that the NIHR Academy has on offer. So the NIHR is the nation's largest funder of health and care research. So we spend on average about £1 billion on research every single year. We are funded by the Department of Health and Social Care, and our research training award holders are recognised as research leaders of the future. So we have a number of NIHR Academy schemes. Our fellowships are offered at all academic levels and are open to all professions. So this ranges from clinicians to research methodologists, and we have a range of different pathways available for you. So I'm going to talk to you today about our fellowships for all. So these fellowships are open to all healthcare professionals. There is no professional requirement. And I'm also going to talk to you about our healthcare professional schemes, which are open to clinicians, apart from doctors and dentists. And you can see on the image that we do have specific schemes which are available for doctors and dentists. And then we do also have research training for all, which is delivered through our various NIHR centres. So I'm briefly going to go over our remit. So NIHR is made up of 7 coordinating centres, and all of them have a slightly different remit. The NIHR Academy has a focus on training, and applications to the NIHR Academy must be in early experimental medicine, clinical and applied health research, or social care research. And applications must have a clear potential for directly benefiting patients, service users, carers and the wider public. And it's important to point out that the NIHR Academy does not fund basic research, so no cell biology, test tubes, lab testing or animal research. And we do have a full remit statement on the NIHR website. We do run a number of programmes with HEE, so that's Health Education England, and these programmes are open to all registered healthcare professionals, excluding doctors and dentists. And these schemes were created to create more opportunities for allied healthcare professionals to encourage them to take part in research. So this is a bit of an example of an ICA research career path, but it's not limited, and we'll go through a range of options available to you during these slides. So the aim of the HEE NIHR Integrated Clinical Academic Programme is to combine clinical research and research leadership with continued clinical practice and clinical development. So here is a list of the eligible professions for our what we call our ICA schemes. If your profession isn't listed on here, that doesn't mean to say you're not eligible, but do get in touch with us and we can discuss your profession and your suitability to the NIHR schemes. So today I'm going to specifically talk to you about internships, our pre-doctoral fellowships and our doctoral fellowships. All the information is on our website, and detailed information about specific schemes can be found in our guidance notes. So HEE, Health Education England, do have some internships. It's important to point out that these are only open to ICA professionals, so anyone clinical apart from doctors and dentists. So internships are a short duration awards, and they're for individuals with little or no research experience, and it just gives you that taster into research. They enable you to successfully apply for further research training. There are other internships available, and I know Versus Arthritis have an internship scheme. And it's important to point out that internships aren't as ruthless as people think. It's not just about free labour. They do cover salary, travel and subsistence. And there are other options to gain research experience. So you could shadow, volunteer. I know the academic year will be coming to an end shortly. You could ask labs if you could spend time with them. They often need an extra pair of hands. We do have plenty of senior investigators within NIHR. They're open to being contacted just to offer your support, and they're really good at mentoring future academic leaders. We also have our NIHR award holders. These are all listed on the NIHR Academy website, and they're happy for you to contact them as well. We are an NIHR family with the aim of growing researchers. And the worst what's the worst that can happen? If you email them, they don't reply. So we do have two options available at predoctoral level. So first up is the Predoctoral Clinical Academic Fellowship, or PCAF for short. So this scheme supports non-medical healthcare professionals who are aspiring to a clinical academic career. So this is open to ICA eligible professions, and it's really important that when you do apply for this scheme, you demonstrate a clinical trajectory. There are two options available. So we have a standard PCAF. So this is aimed at applicants with no academic skills. A full introduction to academic research is given, and it's for you to learn the research skills and receive training to make you a competitive doctoral fellowship applicant. We do also have a PCAF Bridge, which is a slightly shorter award, so that's 6 months. And this award is specifically to support the submission of a competitive doctoral fellowship application whilst undertaking research training. So it just gives you that time needed to prepare for a doctoral fellowship application. And both awards do cover salary, training and development. We will pay for some supervision and mentorship, and we'll also pay for some conference fees. We also have a predoctoral fellowship. So this scheme is designed to support early career researchers who are looking to develop a career in health and social care research methodology. So this award can be utilised by those looking to pursue a career as a methodologist supporting research. So applicants have to be a research methodologist. This scheme provides funding for up to 2 years to complete a master's, and it also provides additional training in areas such as medical statistics, clinical trials design, qualitative research and epidemiology. Also with this scheme, you have the option to complete a 1-year award, and this is to develop a PhD proposal. And again, it just gives you that dedicated time out that you need to prepare for a competitive doctoral fellowship application. And this covers salary, training and development. So we will cover master's fees. And I just want to point out that this award is purely a training award, so no research costs are covered. So to recap, so there are 2 schemes available for you at predoctoral level. So there's a PCAF, which is open to clinicians, and the predoc, which is open to research methodologists. And the focus of these programs are to gain skills in research or to be used as preparation for a PhD. So now I'm going to talk to you about our doctoral fellowship options. So first up is our Clinical Doctoral Research Fellowship, or CDRF for short. So this is a 3-year PhD award with the option to complete part-time. It's run in collaboration with Health Education England. It's aimed at healthcare professionals, again excluding doctors and dentists, and applicants who wish to apply to this scheme wish to develop their research career and clinical skills. So this scheme requires support from a clinical and academic host, and you need both a clinical and academic supervisor. And applicants are required to spend 20% of their fellowship hours undertaking clinical professional practice. Again, our award covers salary, research costs and training and development costs, and anyone who is eligible to apply for this scheme can also apply for our standard doctoral fellowship, as they are pretty similar schemes. So our standard doctoral fellowship, again, is a 3-year PhD award. This is open to all applicants, and it's aimed at researchers who wish to develop their academic research career. So applicants who apply to this scheme wish to become future leaders in health or social care research. And clinicians do have the option to include 20% of clinical time towards a PhD, but this has to be linked to the research that's being undertaken. And again, it covers salary, research costs, training and development and conference fees. So to recap, again, 2 schemes available to doctoral level. So we've got the DF, which is open to all, the CDRF, which is open to clinicians, excluding doctors and dentists. And if you are eligible for a CDRF, then you can apply for a doctoral fellowship. And it's worth noting that we do have strategic themes which our applicants are encouraged to apply under, such as mental health and public health. Dementia, as I mentioned earlier, is also listed as a highlight notice for 2021, as we are wanting to encourage applications within this space. We do also co-fund with charities and industry, and these opportunities do vary per round and per scheme. So if you are interested in partnering with a charity or an industry, do check our guidance notes. So how does NIHR differ to other funders? So the Academy Awards are personal awards. So these are specific to the individual. Our awards support both the research and clinical and professional training and development. So these aren't project grants. Our awards are generous, so we offer funding for anything from 2 years pre-doc, 3 years post-doctoral, and 5 to 8 years postdoc. And as I've said before, we cover salary, research costs, a bespoke training development plan. And there are plenty of member benefits once you are awarded an NIHR fellowship, such as an invitation to our Academy conference. And we do also have leadership programs as well available to you. Our awards are a vehicle for training, and you can see we do run awards from anything from pre-doc all the way through to chair. And the NIHR Academy isn't the only place for funding, and our speakers will detail that in their presentations today. So I wanted to finish on a bit of a case study. So here is Professor Dame Louise Robinson. So she is a Professor of Primary Care and Ageing at Newcastle University. So she completed one of our prestigious research professorships in 2017. And I've listed here just some of her highlights and achievements. So she won a £2 million NIHR Global Health Group on dementia care. She leads one of 3 Alzheimer's Society-funded National Centres of Excellence. Her research has influenced policy and practice, and some more examples of that are she leads on a number of strategies such as the Prime Minister's 2020 Challenge for Dementia, the World Health Organization Dementia Strategy. She's a primary care representative on the NICE Dementia Care Guidelines Committee, which produced the 2018 Clinical Guidance on Dementia Health and Social Care. And she also received a Damehood in 2019 for her services to primary care and for improving older people's quality of life and the care they receive. And now she's an NIHR Senior Investigator. So that brings me to the end of the NIHR Academy presentation. So our contact details are listed, so we can be contacted via telephone, via email, and by our website. You can also tweet us. We're not yet on Instagram, but hopefully we will be in the not too distant future. So I'm now going to hand you over to our next speaker, Dr. Anna Volkmer, who will hopefully bring some of our application processes and some of our schemes to life.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'm just going to share my screen to give you, there we go. Okay, so hello everybody, my name is Anna Volkmer. I'm a senior speech and language therapist at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, which is where I am today. And I'm also a senior researcher and a lecturer at University College London. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my journey through speech and language therapy and speech and language therapy research for people with dementia. And I thought I'd do that by starting off by explaining a little bit about the type of dementia I work with. So, of course, I'm sure that all of you would know that dementia is often considered an umbrella term for a number of different dementia types, and I've just listed some of the main dementia types here on the screen. So there's Alzheimer's, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, and hundreds more besides this. But it's well known that many people with dementia will present with communication difficulties. And one of those communication difficulties can be language difficulties. So difficulties using words and understanding words, using grammar, understanding grammar, so understanding sentences, and knowing what to say and how to say it. And that's typically associated with typical Alzheimer's disease, but also an atypical type of Alzheimer's called logopenic aphasia, and 2 of the atypical types of frontotemporal dementia. And these 3 types of dementias altogether are often commonly known as primary progressive aphasia. That is, the hallmark for these types of dementia is that the primary difficulty, so the leading symptom, is a progressive difficulty in language and communication that's impacting on these people's activities of daily living. So these are the people that I work with. And in terms of speech and language therapy, this is one of the main available management options for people living with primary progressive aphasia. At the moment, unfortunately, there's no cure, but we know that speech therapy, including things like word practice in particular, has been shown to maintain and sometimes improve symptoms. And I've just got an example of how this might look. So this is from a gentleman I've worked with in the past who is a carpenter, and he had difficulties in thinking of the word meanings. And so he practiced the word meanings and linking them to their word forms. And he practiced particularly practiced a set of vocabulary that was relevant to his daily life. And there's lots of evidence that this type of daily practice, short amounts of daily practice, can really help people not only maintain these words, but maintain these words in conversations and consequently in their activities of daily living. However, we know that when we talk is not just made up of words, but also of conversation. And what I found as a speech therapist was that in when I was working clinically, that family members would say to me, well, it's really the conversation we're more worried about. We want to have a conversation as husband and wife or mother and son. I want to be able to talk to my loved ones. So what we found in clinical settings was there was lots of therapy we were doing around conversation, and there wasn't much research evidence that supported it. So on my PhD, I developed a conversation training intervention called Better Conversations with Primary Progressive Aphasia. And I've just popped up on the screen a kind of brief overview of what that intervention looks like. And we developed that intervention to be deliverable in an NHS setting. And in an NHS setting, speech therapists have, if they're able to see these clients, they have about 4 sessions available. So we had to do lots of work in co-producing this intervention to meet the needs of people with PPA, but also co-producing it with speech and language therapists to make sure it was deliverable before we did a pilot intervention study. So we did a randomized controlled pilot study across 11 NHS sites to understand whether it was feasible, acceptable, deliverable in an NHS setting to do this kind of randomized controlled study. And we've developed the intervention as embedded in a learning resource, which is hosted on the UCL Extend website, sat alongside another resource that's a well-known resource used by speech and language therapists for people with stroke-related aphasia. So we also wanted to equip speech and language therapists with the resources they needed. More broadly, in the area of speech and language therapy and dementia, there's lots more work going on. And in fact, it might come to be a bit of a surprise for some of you that speech and language therapists might even have a role in working with people with dementia, and you wouldn't be the only person. And so across the UK, Australia and America and Canada, I'm actually in the middle of a project now where we're looking more broadly at increasing the awareness of the role of the speech and language therapist amongst the broader health and social care community, and equipping people. We understand that there's a lack of expertise amongst speech and language therapists because this is a relatively new area. You might have noticed some of the references I used on the previous slides from the last couple of years. So there's very little research, and so with that, there is also not so much funding in this area as such. So many of the people we work with on this project highlighted that going forward, they wanted us to look more at the implementation of interventions in the NHS and care pathways. And so in terms of future priorities in this area, we are looking to not only develop lots more interventions, but also to educate and support the wider health and social care community, as well as the public, and advocate for more services in this area. So let me tell you a bit about how I came to do this work. I've told you about the work I do, but I graduated as a speech and language therapist in 2002. So I went straight from school to do speech and language therapy at UCL because my mum had a friend who was a speech and language therapist, and my mum thought I might like to enjoy this type of career. And so she encouraged me to do that. So after I graduated as a speech therapist, my mum was indeed correct. This was a great career for me. I really loved it. And I worked across England, across London, and I actually migrated to Australia, and I worked for 5 years in Australia as a speech and language therapist, and I did my master's degree at the University of Flinders, and you can see I had my graduation outdoors in Australia, and I focused on rehabilitation. And in my master's degree, I was particularly looking at people with more broadly with different types of dementia and education. I came back from Australia after 5 years, and I found that in speech and language therapy in the UK, they weren't actually doing that much work in the realm of speech therapy for people with PPA and dementia. So I felt I needed to write a book to help the speech and language therapists have more resources. And this is part of what inspired me to apply for my PhD, because as I started writing this resource, I realized that there wasn't much research. I really realized that there was a lack of research. So I undertook an NIHR-funded PhD at UCL, developing interventions that I described to you. And this is me at my Viva at the end of my PhD last April, which was just at the beginning of lockdown. So I had my Viva online virtually. So just to explain, so to do my PhD, I applied for and was awarded a doctoral research fellowship. I consequently applied for a Development Skills Enhancement Award, and I'm currently funded part-time as a doctoral, on this award. So I hold a Development Skills Enhancement Award, and that's what's allowing me to continue developing the work in this area and continue doing my training, actually, continue developing my skills. And I'm anticipating applying for an advanced fellowship, or I hope to apply for an advanced fellowship to do the next stage of the research and actually try and demonstrate whether this is an effective intervention. I've demonstrated that it's feasible, but what we want to know is, does it even work? That's the next step. So I also wanted to just finish, not only by telling you where I'm going next, but to highlight why I do this. And Rare Dementia Support is a support organisation that I collaborate with. I jointly run the PPA support group, and we've made some videos working with people with PPA. And this is an example of a video where I interviewed a lady who has PPA, and she talked about the value that speech and language therapy gave to her life. And many people that I work with, most recently, one particular lady talked about this PPA, this type of dementia, as being like 1,000 cuts. And Helen, in this video, she talks about how speech and language therapy gave back her hope and her ability to participate in her daily life much more confidently. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to leave it there. So I'll stop sharing my slides, and hopefully I'll see you at the Q&A afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. It was really interesting to hear about your intervention and the research you did within your doctoral fellowship, and also your future research plans as well. It'd be quite nice to see an application from you for an advanced fellowship. And it was really interesting for you to highlight the role that speech and language therapists do have in the fight against dementia. So if anyone has any questions for Anna, please do pop your questions in the Q&A and comments boxes, and we will ask them at the end of the session.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. So next, I'm going to hand you over to our next speaker, Dr. Emily Oliver. So Emily is a lead nurse for dementia from Portsmouth Hospital University Trust.
Thank you, Rebecca. As I'm talking, if you just nod your head, you can hear me. Oh, you've gone. Perfect, thank you. And welcome everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you join us today. I'm also at work, as you can see I'm in my uniform, and you might be able to hear some background noise, that's my colleagues, but I will persevere through them. So I'll just share my screen here. So I'm going to talk to you today about how I went from being a nurse through into dementia research and sort of back into nursing, but having a fit in both camps, so being a clinical academic, as it were. So who am I? So I'm a registered mental health nurse by background. I also am a clinical academic doctoral fellow. So what was being described earlier, I did the DProf pathway. At the moment, I'm a lead nurse for dementia at Portsmouth Hospital Trust. I'm also a Florence Nightingale scholar, so I did a travel scholarship for them, focused on dementia. And really my research interest is dementia care, but more specifically in acute hospitals. So how did I get to where I am today? I was just doing some maths before, and 10 years ago, probably, I was going around to different universities, seeing where I was going to go, knowing I wanted to do something in healthcare, but wasn't quite sure what that would look like. So my A-levels were focused around healthcare. So I did biology, I did health and social care. I thought I wanted to be a midwife, but actually following a few open universities, I went on to do mental health nursing. So I decided I wanted to be a mental health nurse. I wanted to study at the University of Southampton. So 3 years, a whirlwind 3 years of university, and consisting of 6 placements, all in different areas of practice. My first being on a dementia ward. And from that first placement, I knew that that was what I wanted to specialise in. I wanted to care for people living with dementia. Within the 3rd year of study at university, we had to do a dissertation, and through this dissertation we created an audit, so sort of a smaller scale research study, and within that I wanted to look at the use of antipsychotics for people in hospital who had dementia. So we created this audit, and I remember a lot of my nursing colleagues saying, you know, actually this isn't what I wanted to be doing, I want to be out on the field, I was a nurse because I want to be supporting patients. But for me, I loved that. I loved being able to scope the literature. I loved developing the methodology of it all. I love being able to influence practice at a higher level. So I thought, absolutely, I can be on the ward supporting patients directly. But doing this audit allowed me to actually assess what was going on at a broader level and be able to make a difference in that sense. So I spoke to my supervisor, because around the time that people were applying for jobs, I was thinking, I don't know if I really want to go into direct clinical practice. I think actually research might be more the area I want to go into. But then the nurse in me was actually, I applied for nursing because I did want to be patient facing and I did want to support patients. So after a supervision meeting, I was informed of the clinical academic doctorate. So I hadn't done a master's, so I didn't think that would be possible. But the clinical academic doctorate included the master's and the PhD together. So I went to an open evening at my university, and it just so happened that the University of Southampton did offer this pathway. So I went to an interview, wasn't quite sure what I was going in for, had my interview and was accepted onto this programme. So I'm going to talk about the clinical academic doctorate on my next few slides. I won't go into that too much. So that was 4 years. And then I applied for a job at Dementia UK, and I was there for 3 years working as a practice development facilitator and then a admiral nurse consultant. And then actually I started this job 4 weeks ago. This is the end of my 4th week. So I've been here in this trust as a lead nurse for dementia since then. So that's a swift overview. So the clinical academic doctoral pathway, well, as described, it's a 4-year studentship, so it was completely paid for. It was funded by the National Institute of Health Research, but it was hosted by the University of Southampton. And it's a clinical academic split. So I did 60% of my time in research and 40% of my time clinically. So the research topic that I had was quite broad. So it was compassionate care and dementia. And there wasn't too much remit within that. So that was just a broad topic. So I was a mental health nurse by background. So those of you who don't know, you have specific placements for mental health. So I'd never stepped foot in a hospital, actually. This gave me the opportunity, because the host organisation was Portsmouth Hospital Trust, for my clinical work, to be a mental health nurse within an acute site, which isn't something that usually happens. So that was really exciting for me to be able to have that opportunity to develop new skills. The best thing about this actually was that because my research topic was so broad, I was able to use what I was learning in my clinical role to inform what I was going to be researching. So I was on the ward and I was seeing some of the problems that people were telling me about. I was noticing the issues day to day, and I was able to think, okay, there must be a way that we can change this. So from the academic side, I went and did literature search, and I saw where the gaps in the research were that coincided with the issues and concerns that I saw in practice. And that's how I formulated my research question. So I looked at what affects nursing staff capacity to deliver compassionate care on the hospital ward. And the whole way through, my clinical and my academic work coincided and affected each other, which was just fantastic. I would recommend to anybody, if you can, to do a clinical academic pathway. As was described earlier, it is a training pathway. I learned something new every single day, and I don't think I will ever get that opportunity again. I developed in my clinical role, which was fantastic. I wasn't constrained to one ward. I could go and spend some time with other practitioners in other areas of the hospital. I actually did some time as a deputy manager in a care home with that time. So my clinical work, I was developing lots of different skills in lots of different areas of practice. In terms of my academic work, I could go to conferences, I was able to write papers, I was able to network with other people. I was able to learn and be on other people's research studies. I could attend training. I went on a statistics course. I would never have thought I would have went on a statistics course before. There are so many opportunities within that. If you scope them and you find them, then you can do them. So I think it was about 5 years. I did my Viva and I was awarded my PhD. So it was just the best 4 to 5 years that I had ever had. So just a few highlights then. So you might see a lot of graduation photos. So that's me graduating at the University of Southampton, 2018, 19 now, I think. The years are going by so quickly. So for me, that bottom right-hand corner there, that's me starting my first day as a nurse in my scrubs. That was a real highlight for me, especially working in an acute ward that I hadn't done before. Publishing my first paper, that's that top one there. So I contributed to a study that my supervisor was working on, and we wrote a paper on that together. That smaller symbol there, that's my first conference. So that, you know, seeing my name in a conference book and talking about my research was just fantastic. That's my role at Dementia UK there, consultant admiral nurse. And then that's me 4 weeks ago starting in this role, which has absolutely just been an absolute dream job. And I really, hand on heart, don't think I would be in this job today if I hadn't have done that clinical academic pathway. So the next steps for me, just so you know, if you're thinking longer term, where will this take me? So I'm very keen to continue my clinical academic journey. I really want to build my career within nursing. Not sure what that looks like yet. But actually at the same time, continue to scope research opportunities. And as I was saying before, really harness what I'm learning in practice to formulate my research questions, because I think that's the real benefit of doing this sort of pathway. And then continue to publish, present at a conference, to network. I really think the opportunities are continuing as my career goes on. So my recommendations for anybody thinking about it, do scope and search for clinical academic pathways if you can do them. It might not be that you want to do a pathway, but actually if you're working clinically or you want to be a healthcare professional, try and scope out other research opportunities within that. So get involved with quality improvement projects, see if you can spend time with the research teams within your setting. There is other ways to get the best of both worlds without doing those pathways. I think for me, find a role model, someone you can learn from, find about how they did it, what paths they took, what training they went on. I think really try and find your passion. So I always knew that dementia was my passion, and it's going to be no surprise to you, but a doctorate is quite a long, sometimes taxing, you know, you have to put a lot of effort into it. And it was that passion and that drive to improve dementia care that kept me going. And, you know, I didn't find those weekends or late nights at chore, because I knew I'd be making a difference. And that was my passion, that was my drive. Another thing, I really think, take every opportunity you can. They are out there. There's so much now, especially in terms of virtual opportunities. Just take it all in and do everything you can, because I really think that's the best way to learn sort of where you want to go and what your next steps are. This is just, I always say this, I think the world is your oyster. It really is. You know, research is broad, and even research in dementia is broad. There's things like me, so thinking about care, you've got, you know, microbiology, you've got genetics, there's so much. So the world really is your oyster. And that's me. I will stop sharing my screen if I can. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Emily. There did appear to be, we couldn't see your slides, but you did a fantastic job, and you were really engaging. So we'll try and share your slides just with the people who have registered today following this webinar. But that was really interesting to hear about your career and especially how you got into research and also the clinical academic pathway that you took. And it was really interesting to see your interest in audits and statistics as well. It's nice to see. So I'm going to pass you over to our next speaker, Annabelle Long. Annabelle is a physiotherapist and a PhD student at Nottingham University.
Hello. I'll just share my screen, hopefully. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so my name's Annabelle Long. I'm a physiotherapist by background, currently working 1 day a week on an NIHR programme called Praised. And I'm also, as Rebecca said, a second year PhD student at the University of Nottingham, researching dementia and group exercise. I am at home. I have the joy of homeschooling as well. And I'm here today to talk to you about my journey into research and why you may also want to follow a career in dementia research. So, like Emily, I also went to Southampton University, and in 2000 I trotted off full of excitement to study for my degree in physiotherapy. It was very firmly fixed in my head that I was going to be a sports physiotherapist, preferably cricket, definitely sport. After completing my degree, I started junior rotations at Northampton General Hospital, and after about a year I also got a job as the Northamptonshire County Cricket Club Academy Physio, so far so good. I continued working my way up the NHS and sporting career ladders with a Band 6 musculoskeletal rotation at the Royal Derby Hospital and a variety of roles in the cricketing world, but somewhere along the road I became quite disillusioned with it all. Sport wasn't really giving me a fulfilling career that I imagined. A lot of the time I felt like I was more of a mother than a therapist, and my career within the NHS was not really going anywhere. So I felt like I was falling down the career ladder with nowhere to go. And statutory pictures of children. Life moves on, as they say. I got married in 2011, and in 2013 this cheeky little one appeared, and I honestly wouldn't have believed you if you told me that such a tiny thing, and he was a tiny thing, would have a huge impact on my life. But when I returned to work after maternity leave, I just knew I couldn't carry on doing what I was doing. So in 2015, I saw an advert for a research physiotherapist. I was quite intrigued by the advert, as research had been something that had interested me even at university, so I thought I would apply. I was successful in my application, and in July 2015 started my very first job in research. I was employed as a physiotherapist, mainly to deliver the chair-based exercise interventions in community settings, but there was scope within the project to do as much or as little of the other work as I wanted. I was very keen to make a good impression, so I did start recruiting patients on my second day. This particular study was looking at the feasibility of chair-based exercises in community settings. Unusually, as I discovered later, we didn't exclude people with dementia per se, they just had to be able to understand and follow instructions. One of the things I noticed when delivering the intervention was that people that were living with more severe levels of dementia struggled with the structured part of the programme. So we'd give them TheraBands and we'd give them weights, and they were kind of just fairly alien to them. And they didn't really know what to do and how to use them, even with demonstration. But later on in the sessions, when I introduced games such as skittles and chair hockey, everybody started to engage equally. And this got me thinking. A key skill for a good researcher is to be curious. Why were they engaging with the games? Was there something in this that we could use to help other people living with dementia engage with other physiotherapy inventions? And from that question came another, and the rest, as they say, was history. I'd always enjoyed working with older people when I worked clinically, and I was really fascinated by what I was noticing working with these participants living with dementia. It was a very strange environment compared to the NHS, no jam-packed schedule from 8:30 to 4:30. I was pretty much free to organise my own time, and I was able to read, which was extremely odd. In those early weeks, I read quite a lot, mainly relevant to the project, but also about research in general, and I absolutely loved it. I'd finally found something that I felt I was good at, and I could make a difference to people in a way that I'd never felt able to previously. With the support of other people on that particular project team, I did begin to look at research as a career that by now was not following that nice straight staircase, but was starting to look a bit more like this. I carried on working in research in different roles, and in 2018, I undertook a master's in research methods at the University of Nottingham, which is something that can be completed under the PCAF scheme. My most recent job is working as a research assistant and a physiotherapist on a study called PRAISED, which is the Promoting Activity, Independence and Stability in Early Dementia and Mild Cognitive Impairment. It's a multi-component intervention specifically designed to help maintain activity and reduce falls in people living with dementia. I started on the project in the summer of 2018 after I finished my master's, and as the large randomised controlled trial began to compare this programme with brief assessment and advice. Trial's still ongoing and involves several sites across the UK, and we're hoping to show that the programme really does make a difference to activity and independence without obviously causing harm. And evidence like this does help policymakers and commissioners decide on what programmes they implement in the future. I was employed on the trial initially as a research assistant, recruiting and conducting baseline assessments with participants, but I've also been involved as a physiotherapist, delivering the intervention to the participants, and that enabled me to continue using some of my physiotherapy skills. And it was whilst working on this study that I developed and started my PhD research project. So as part of my role on the PRAISE study, I did complete a small separate study looking at the impact of a dementia-friendly exercise class that had been set up at the University of Nottingham as a result of earlier work on the PRAISE programme. We found that participants who took part enjoyed many benefits from the class, and that these benefits went beyond just the physical health, incorporating mental health benefits and social wellbeing too. And I wanted to look at what made this class so successful and how this could be applied more widely. Initially, I wanted to find out characteristics of exercises that had provided benefits to people living with dementia, alongside the other core components that might be needed to set up or adapt an exercise class for people with dementia, such as accessibility or environmental factors, and then use these findings to develop an implementation toolkit that would allow for replication and across settings and providers. There we go. And then we get to 2020, COVID-19 hit, and with it, the classic virus slide. One of the elements of the project was a small ethnographic study. There was small I was going to do mini ethnographies where I would observe and participate in exercise classes and then run focus groups afterwards with the participants. Well, what with the tears and the lockdowns and the various restrictions, the opportunities to get out there and do this part of the project within the timescales of a PhD has become ever diminishing. So in what seems to have become quite a standard research phase over the last 11 months, I pivoted my project to be able to finish within 3 years and use the work that I had already completed and take advantage of the situation that COVID was providing. Many exercise classes have now had to go online, and that does include some for older people and people with dementia. However, will this provide the same social wellbeing benefits that we're seeing in the face-to-face classes already observed? But my new plan is to observe some of the online classes followed by online focus groups to compare and contrast face-to-face classes with online groups and find out whether the online classes can be delivered successfully for people living with dementia. Do they maintain the benefits that were found in my earlier study on face-to-face classes, or do these classes need to return to face-to-face delivery when it's appropriate? Oh, hang on, went too fast. So dementia research, why you? Why would anyone want to follow in my footsteps down the research path? Well, I kind of think my story and the squiggly picture of my career trajectory, which is one of my favourite slides, helps show that research isn't just for those extremely clever people who got first-class degrees at university. I am certainly not one of those. I've never been very convinced of my academic ability at all, and if Southampton University had done American-styled most likely to awards, I would certainly have been awarded most likely to not go on and do further study. And yet here I am, the proud possessor of a master's degree and now a second-year PhD student. I do appreciate that the need for a cure is paramount in the minds of many people, and there have been earlier talks this week from scientists who are working on this very objective. But there is also a recognition of the need for improvements to the quality of life for people living with dementia now. And this, I think, is where healthcare researchers can make a real difference. I've really enjoyed my last 6 years in research, but found my real passion over the last 3 working with people living with dementia. I would definitely recommend any healthcare workers out there to consider a career in dementia research, and I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody has afterwards. Thank you for listening. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Annabelle. As you said in your presentation, research does throw up question after question, and leads from one research project to another one. And your presentation also demonstrates how a PhD can relate to a larger trial as well, and how you can fit that in. And I think you've also highlighted the challenges of COVID as well, especially the adaptations that you've had to make, because it's been a really challenging time for researchers. But I just think the fact that people have amended their studies and have still continued to do research is just, it's just thanks to amazing researchers.
Thank you.
So thank you. So please put your questions for Annabelle in the Q&A and comments boxes, and we will ask them at the end of the session. So I'm going to hand over to our next speaker, Clive Thomas. So Clive is a mental health nurse and a DProf student who works with both Swansea Bay University Health Board and Swansea University.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. And thanks again, Rebecca. I think you're going to share my slides for me, so I'll just...
I am.
Just wait a moment whilst you set it up.
Yes. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, that's just a little bit of background about myself. And I suppose what I wanted to say, I've had the advantage of listening to everybody else speak before me, and it's always lovely to hear how other people have set about on their career journeys. I basically have, as you can see from the white beard, I'm not an early career searcher. I'm kind of end of career, but it's equally fascinating how I've been able to pursue a career in research, perhaps quite late compared to a lot of other people that have spoken today. So like Emily earlier, I'm a mental health nurse. I didn't come to nursing until I was actually about 30. And I suppose the great thing about mental health nursing is that it does help sometimes to have had a little bit of life experience and perhaps to have worked in other areas. Incidentally, I think Anna's actually left, but I did actually start out as a speech and language therapist, but I won't go into the reasons. I never actually pursued that till the end. So I'd always wanted a career in healthcare, and actually nursing had always been my first choice, but for some reason I hadn't actually actively pursued it. So anyway, I was working and in a job that I didn't particularly relish, and along came the opportunity to join one of the first degree courses that were being run in Wales at Swansea University under what was then called the Project 2000. So basically I was able to graduate 3 years later. I took my first job working in acute mental health, but really knew that I always wanted to work in dementia care, and have worked in community and also in community care settings, and also in specialist care as well in inpatient environments. My current role has only been since 2016. So prior to this, I'd been working as a memory assessment nurse up in West Wales, where I'm from, in Ceredigion. I'd set up a memory assessment service there. And basically, I wanted to pursue what I saw as being quite a shortfall in the number of people who we were diagnosing. A lot of people, for all kinds of reasons, don't come forward for assessment. There are all kinds of log jams and reasons why that happens. Very often, obviously, we know about the stigma that dementia holds. Very often it's GPs and people with perhaps old-fashioned held ideas about, well, it's an inevitable part of growing older, which we now know it isn't necessarily, and that there are things that we can do to help. So it's obviously really, really important that people do come forward for an assessment and diagnosis, and prior to that they get the pre-diagnostic support and counselling that they need in order to sort of proceed with confidence. So I had the opportunity to apply for a job based in the city and county of Swansea, working for the healthcare trust, Swansea Bay. And it was basically to set up a dementia assessment service within primary care. So this kind of took me outside of the auspices of mental health where I'd been working before, and it allowed me then to sort of work closer within GP surgeries and alongside GPs, lots of other people within the integrated community teams, occupational therapists, social workers, physiotherapists, and myself and a very small sort of team of dementia support workers who are band 4 healthcare support workers, so they're not qualified. We're tasked with basically just going out and trying to raise the profile of people who may be worried about their memory, who maybe had tried but failed to come forward for assessment. And then we also realized that there were quite a lot of people who for one thing and another, because of lots of other reasons, they perhaps other illnesses, comorbidities, were not being best served by the conventional memory assessment service, which is offered through memory clinics and which are widely based within community mental health teams in Wales, although there are other models throughout the rest of the United Kingdom. So I had basically the opportunity here to look at what could be done in helping to increase the percentage of people who we needed to reach. It allowed us to take a much more person-centered approach and work outside of what I think is an overly medicalized approach very often, and allowed us also to be doing that in a team around the individual, as we call it. And last thing on the slide there is obviously we realize now that it's an absolute fundamental human right to have a diagnosis, and that very often people who don't have the diagnosis but still obviously have the symptoms and experience the progression in symptoms really struggle to get the help and support that they need unless that has actually been properly explained and recorded so everybody understands. So can I have the next slide, Rebecca? So moving on, I had embarked on a master's in 2008, which was as part of a mid-career break. I also completed a specialist practitioner award, which basically sits alongside my nursing registration, and it's a qualification for me to obviously show my credentials and that I'm working in community and producing evidence-based practice and service developments according to that. So can I just go back one slide, Rebecca? Sorry. We had the opportunity then in 2016, after I'd already embarked on a professional doctorate journey. So the professional doctorate is equivalent to a PhD, but as Emily was saying earlier, it combines the clinical with the academic. And it also is very suitable for people like myself working who basically want to pursue study part-time. I had the opportunity in 2016 to meet with people in Swansea University who introduced me to an app called Cantab Mobile, which is produced by Cambridge Cognition. And I thought that it would be a really good tool for our team of dementia support workers to be able to triage for clinically significant memory impairment. So we knew that we were going to be talking to people who had voiced memory concerns, but this allowed us then to actually go just a little step further and say, well, with your permission, we can do a little test of memory here, and we can advise you then as to whether we can go forward with a further in-depth assessment. So next slide, please. The Bevan Commission, which is basically an independent think tank which informs practice in Welsh Government in Wales, was looking in 2016 to set up a programme of health technology exemplars. And I just happened to be again in the right place and the right time to apply for some funding and propose my idea of using the Cantab mobile app within our team. So they gave me a sum of money, £7,500, in order to purchase the multi-use licenses that we were needing. And basically, for 1 year, I was part of a exemplar program, which then at the end meant that we could showcase our findings and use that as part of the evidence that what we were doing was making a difference. My particular study itself, I'd explored doing action research within a group within the university who were called PEER. These were people with experience of mental health issues themselves, or they were carers, and they were also academics. And they listened to my proposal, and they made a very strong recommendation that I might like to think about using action research as my methodology of choice going forward in the professional doctorate. The other thing about the professional doctorate is that it incorporates the use of reflective practice, which is embedded within nursing anyway. This was something that I was familiar with, having used it as part of my MSc. And just to quote the just down the bottom of the slide, basically another feature of DProf candidates is that they're more likely to engage in areas of practice where there may be a particular practical problem or concern, and therefore you basically have the opportunity to evaluate that service. The other thing I would also like to say is that the professional doctorate candidates are also more likely to work outside of their own professional boundaries. So for example, I was coming well away from my own area of mental health. Yeah, that's lovely. If you go on to the next one. I touched very briefly on my methodology of choice, which was action research. Very briefly, as a methodology, it's kind of fallen out of fashion just recently. I think at one point it was very much a kind of flavor of the month, but I don't know why that is. And certainly where you're looking to embed research within practice, action research is really, really practical, because very often it allows you to continue working in an area of practice where otherwise you would basically have to sit outside. So this slide here just shows you what basically is a spectrum, and action research can fall anywhere along these lines. My particular study is an evaluation of an intervention, for example, using the Cantab app. However, having said that, I'm also very concerned about the social injustice of people not being diagnosed who need to be. It is kind of very researcher-led, because I'm the one who's manipulating all the conditions. So perhaps less participatory, but still very, very collaborative. It has kind of got a fixed design, but I would actually say my journey has been very flexible. So in other words, I've never really always known where the next step is in the process. It's kind of emerged flexibly. It is about exploring what is going on and also being critical. The other thing about action research then is that we go through various cycles, and ideally you would be going through 3 cycles, possibly even a further one after that. So I'd already said that the cycle 1 was joining the Health Technology Exemplar Programme with the Bevan Commission. The cycle 2 was the next part in my journey, where I applied to our Regional Partnership Board for extra funding, and they basically bought our model and allowed us to employ more dementia support workers and another clinician. This gave us enough people then to be able to align ourselves with the what we call GP clusters in Wales, but I think are called primary care networks in England. And what we were finding was that our proximity to the GPs meant that they were more likely to refer to us. Sorry, Rebecca, just that last slide again, just go back to the end. The third cycle, again, it is just showing really the opportunities which the being with the Bevan Commission have actually offered me. So I was invited to present at the International Conference of Integrated Care in San Sebastian in the Basque Country in 2019, where I gave 2 presentations. I joined the Connected Health Summer School in Italy in 2019, which had been put together by Ulster University, and was an absolutely fantastic opportunity to spend a week working with the Irish Alzheimer's Society on the project. And currently our project has now actually been selected for Adopt and Spread under the Bevan Commission. So we've got other sites across Wales who are interested in pursuing the same model that we are using. Next slide. Just briefly then what the challenges and rewards have been of using action research. I mentioned there that basically I've come very far from my comfort zone in as much as a mental health professional, I'm now working with people who are based in the schools of management and also the Centre for Ageing and Dementia Research. So again, it's been really important to have the right fit where supervision is concerned, and I've got absolutely 2 fantastic supervisors who've really, really helped. The actual journey itself, I suppose, has been a challenge, because what's happened is I joined a DProf course 6 years, going into the 7th year now. And unfortunately, I think what's happened is that they've kind of lost that ethos, and they've moved more towards a sort of like a pure research PhD pathway. And again, I felt at times that doesn't always meet my need. And I have to sort of keep reminding myself and also the program managers that I am and was recruited to do something different. And again, this kind of touches really on what it is that I'm researching. Real life research is actually very, very complex, and to force a simple solution onto that isn't always the right fit. Doing action research, again, it's about challenging the status quo. What I've exposed is that a lot of what we are doing is really questioning what conventional services and why perhaps people are being missed. And it's been very uncomfortable at times, because although we're doing a really, really valuable job and we're much appreciated within primary care, that hasn't, for example, been the reception that I've had from within older adult mental health services, almost to the point that actually they even have tried to close down our service and basically cut off our input altogether. That has really forced me back into academia, because what I've found is that there is a place of refuge. It's a community of practice. I've been able to join the wider world network of collaborative action researchers and present at their conference last year. This has meant for me, terrific personal and professional growth. And at the same time as working, we're generating new practice. So overall, we've touched on a project here which has huge potential for scale up. Our initial ideas, which were really just a project about, let's just try to do a little bit more triage, has actually almost blown the doors off, because what we've said is do you know what, the whole way that we approach assessment and escalation of need at the moment is just wrong. We've got far too many people sitting in specialist memory services, which is not right. We do need to triage and make sure that those people who don't need to go to secondary care are signposted elsewhere. We've, just like the other people I mentioned today, COVID has given us, a huge opportunity as well as restriction in terms of how we practice. And from my personal point of view, I'm really pleased that I've been invited now as part of our health board to contribute towards a future vision of what dementia services will look like. And obviously for me, that will be the greater contribution of work at primary care level, where we can experience more integration. Going forward, I think that this study that I'm just about concluding now has highlighted for me that there's masses of potential here in future roles. And I would say for anybody who's looking to come in to work in dementia and who maybe thinks that nursing is for them, to basically say that things are changing, and they are changing suddenly and very, very fast. And what we're finding is that whereas nurses in the past might have been very much sort of restricted in the scope, I think now have got the option to work within community alongside GPs, to be able to undertake not just assessment but diagnosis as well, and maybe even take on non-medical prescribing. So my particular future research interest would almost definitely be looking at the future roles for teams such as ours. So again, thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Clive. That was really interesting to hear about the Cantab app, and I liked how you talked to us about using patients and public involvement as well. I think that's really crucial when putting together a PhD proposal and just doing research of any kind. And it was also really interesting to hear about the action research that you did. Yeah, and I think everyone has highlighted today in today's session just the opportunities are available to you during doing a PhD and afterwards as well. So yes, thank you. So I would now like to invite all of our speakers back for the Q&A, and Adam Smith will also be joining us, who has helped organise Careers Week. He will be facilitating the Q&A for us today.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you for, thanks to the NIHR and the Academy for agreeing to host this today, and for all the fantastic work you do in supporting healthcare professionals to kind of pursue their careers in research. I think a lot of the people watching us today are perhaps still student nurses and junior doctors and things like that. Are there any, before we come to the questions that we've had posted, please do post them all now as well, keep going. Are there any particular schemes you think that are more relevant to somebody who is literally just coming out of university with their nursing degree and is starting hands-on, or is that too early to think about an academic career, or do you have to wait a few years?
Yeah, so I think the pre-doctoral schemes and the PCAS schemes would be useful for people, because at doctoral level, you are assessed on your academic output, so any journals that you've been part of, and any and any conferences that you've done. So I think at this level, it's about just trying to get experience in research. So any kind of shadowing opportunities that you can have, contact the labs, and definitely speak to us just about our pre-doc and schemes as well, so we can hopefully help you, because it might just be a master's, but it also gives you that learning in research skills that's required just to kind of move you on to, I guess, further in your career in research.
So I guess it's never, so the message there is it's never too soon to start thinking about being an academic clinician. As soon as you start work will be an appropriate time. We also spent a lot of time creating a directory of all the healthcare related, the dementia related further education programs which come up, and there are quite a lot of dementia masters programs. Does any of the panel know, do NHS employers support you to complete a master's part-time alongside your work if that master's program is relevant? Thinking about some of the MSc dementia programs at places like Bradford and Hull and UCL. Do you know if that's the case? Anna, go on, you go first.
Yeah, I teach on the MSc, the Dementia MSc at UCL, and I also have had colleagues, speech and language therapy colleagues, do that course, and I know that NHS Trust will support you. For example, one of my colleagues who did that was supported by South London and Maudsley, and they actually paid for her tuition fees to attend that course, to do that course. And it's really well attended by healthcare professionals. a number of different points in their kind of career trajectory.
So that's a great place to start then as well, I think, in terms of you'll get some research training as well to understand the research process and some of the methods used. It's a good place to start in an MSc. And then we'll set you up, I imagine, for some of the academy placements that you can then look at.
Definitely. And I think just speaking to people who are doing research, just finding how they got into it, what experience they had, what opportunities they were given, people tend to be really helpful. We list our selection committee memberships on our website as well, so it's useful for people to look around there. They're happy to be contacted. They're really helpful. If you are applying and any selection committee members are based at your host institution, and they will be conflicted on your application, so they will help you prepare an application. So it's just, really useful.
And think about, most of you are in professions where there's a special royal, there are associations and colleges and things that support your work as well. Do the Royal College of, is there a Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists? Do they help you, or physiotherapists? And of course you've got the RCN as well. Do the colleges offer any advice on getting research experience? Let's go to Annabelle. Do you know?
So the CSP have their own kind of research grants that you can apply for. CSP is Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. They have some research grants that you can apply for. One is like for novice researchers, so people who've got no research experience, and you can use that for educational masters. One of the things that I did when I first got into research before I started my masters, because as I said in my thing, I only got a 2-2. I wasn't convinced about my academic ability, and I wasn't convinced I'd be able to study at masters. So I got a little grant from the CSP to do one module at Newcastle on aging and research, and got a pretty good grade, so I decided that perhaps I could do a master's after all. So there are small pots of money within the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists. And also, if you're in a specialist interest, they have specialist interest groups within the CSP as well, one of whom is Agile, which is for older people. Again, that's the one that I'm a member of, and they gave me some money to do my mixed method systematic review course as well. So yes, I can point anybody in the right direction of where to look. There are places to look within physio for small pots of money.
Brilliant. What about in nursing, Clive or Emily?
Yeah, I did mean to. I didn't have time to basically touch on fees, but I would say I've been particularly lucky. Sort of mid-career, Welsh Government were supporting people to do the Specialist Practitioner Award through a widening access programme. And I suppose these funding streams come and go. I don't even know if it's still around, but it just meant that I was able to be seconded from my job at that time, which was a community mental health nurse in one area, and become embedded in another area, and also follow a module of master's studies. So I completed the modules in 1 year, and then the following year I was able to submit a dissertation. And then with my current employer, I've been able to negotiate having all of my fees paid. So again, we're a university health board, and so they have preferential rates with Swansea University. And I suppose, we don't get pay rises anymore in the NHS, but one of the perks, if you want to call it that, is that you can have your tuition fees paid. And I just think, well, okay, it's almost akin to doing a hobby now, really, studying and saying and acquiring all these skills. An expensive one, but I've managed to not pay for the last 4 years. So again, I think that's really good.
I mean, and the only reason I raise this because you can see how these are very good introductions to kind of research. And Anna, do you obviously, I don't want to keep going on about this. A speech and language therapist, is that much the same?
We do. Anyone who's watched The King's Speech will know we have a Royal College of Speech and Language Therapy, and they do. They have on their website, and any speech, once you become a you're looking to be a speech therapist, they have a special section for prospective student speech therapists. And then they also have a section on how to do research, and there's various funds such as, and there's various charitable funds such as the Lord Tavistock Fund. He had a language impairment, so he funds a lot of research into language. And so, yeah, there's huge numbers of resources, often much smaller. And as Rebecca was saying, NIHR are one of the more generous funders, so it's often the more attractive because they kind of make provision for your pay, your wage, that's the word I was looking for, and also your pension contributions, and funding to go to on trips and overseas visits. So some of the other, so often at the Royal College of Speech Therapists, they'll highlight other resources that aren't quite so generous, but that can, for example, pay for a course or attendance at a conference or contribute to some fees. So they'll give you an idea of what level of support they can provide.
The NIHR one's just so holistic, isn't it? It does really cover, and you're not breaking new ground. The trusts are used to working with the NIHR. It's part of that kind of institution. It's a normal part of the process. And of course, with the MSCs, if you use that as your entry point, you can do a PG DIP or a PG Cert or those other things. All those programs are on our website, so do go have a look for all the directories. I'm sure there will be a university near you that runs one of those courses if you're looking as a way to go with that piece of paper in your hand when you go into HR or into the R&D office to raise that question. Okay, I will take a question from Zoom, which asks, can international students partake in apply for NIHR schemes, I guess?
Yeah, so yeah, we are open to international students. So it's about finding a host organisation who will employ you for the duration of the fellowship. We don't fund accommodation or things like that. And in terms of fees, master's fees and PhD fees, we will only fund the UK amount for that year as well. So anything over than that either needs to be funded by the host, which they do often fund, or would need to be paid for personally.
That's great, because we're very keen to attract, obviously, students to the UK right now as well. It's a wonderful world-leading place to study for dementia research, so do look it up. We also have a question from Jasmine, who asks, how would you suggest getting experience in dementia research as an undergraduate medic? I'm going to break this question down because there's 2 points to it. So how would you suggest getting experience in dementia research as an undergraduate medic? Emily, have you got any thoughts on this? I haven't given you a chance to answer any yet.
That's okay. So I think there's multiple ways you could do it. So within your clinical work, there will be a research work stream and a sort of a network division, I'm sure, so tapping into that, or at your local university or the university that you sit under, I'm sure they have research going on as well. So I think it's just about scoping. I'm sure people will be more than willing for you to shadow and spend some time in different teams. So that's what. Going back to your other topic, Adam, really quickly, so for nursing as well, it's fine. So there's the Florence Nightingale Foundation. And there's also the Foundation of Nursing Studies. So again, they have grants and scholarships. So it's worth checking them out as well.
I was going to say Florence Nightingale because you mentioned that you'd been on that scheme as well. So they also do fund nurses who want to step into research. Is it only nurses or other people as well? Oh,
that's a good point. I'm not going to answer,
Annabelle,
but I will do some research.
I think it is only nurses that do Florence Nightingale, because I have had a vague look at it and it does appear to be only nurses.
So there's a second point to this question, which is, are there any internships available for undergraduate medicine students? I'm currently in my second year, so I have very little lab experience, but would like to get involved early as I wish to later look at neurology with a view to becoming a dementia specialist. So you should, you should have an opportunity to get lab experience. I think looking at the neuroscience programs is another way to go. You could look at doing a neuroscience MSc. It's not unheard of for neurologists to look at that. In fact, we've got a great blog which we've added to our website this week, which is from exactly somebody like you that was thought about wanting a research career from medical school, but graduated in medicine and then swapped across to neuroscience. So have a look on the website for an example of somebody who's done that. It's Dr. Ashvini Keshavan, who's also at UCL. Rebecca, of course, we've focused a lot on, because we have physios and nurses and speech and language therapists with us today, but of course your schemes apply for doctors as well.
Yeah, they do. And I think it's important to highlight that there is an integrated academic training scheme as well, which is run by another team within the NIHR Academy, which is specifically for doctors and dentists. And they would be more than happy just to talk to you about how you can get into research, what opportunities are available to you as well, especially around internships. I would also, and I'd like to highlight that we've got the research design service as well for anyone who is thinking about doing a pre-doc or a doctoral fellowship, and they are a fantastic service. So there are 10 of those sites based regionally, and they have specialist advisors in areas such as health economics, qualitative. They've also got experience in clinical professionalism, so they match you up with an advisor and can give you advice on the application process, not just us, but other funders, remit. They can give you advice in terms of a supervisory team, that they have a list of supervisors, suitable hosts. So I'd also definitely recommend anyone to speak to us, but to speak to them as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rebecca. Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment, but what we can say is that I think all of our panelists that do have social media have we've got bios on all of our panelists from today on the website. If they're on social media, their Twitter, it's usually Twitter, and their Twitter name's there. I know not everybody's on Twitter, but I think if you're at university or you're an undergraduate right now and thinking about research, Twitter is a really useful place to be. It's not just old people like me that are on there. But there's lots of opportunities, people looking for interns and giving experience or looking for lab assistants or clinical research jobs are often advertised there. So please do go have a look and sign up to Twitter and follow our panelists from today. I'm sure we're all quite happy to be approached if you were to tweet at them with questions and things. I don't know if anybody's able to join us today, but we also have our coffee hour at 4 o'clock today. On wonder.me, the links in our bio to join us at 4 o'clock today, where you can chat face to face with some of our panelists from today, but also many early career researchers from a whole different range of backgrounds. On our website as well, Anna and Emily are regular bloggers for us who write about their careers, lots from the very early stages to what they're doing today, and demonstrating how everybody's research here is making real impact to people's lives. Because I think when we look at the reasons why you might want to do this, I think we've given a great example of it can be very rewarding and fulfilling as an individual, but you're also going to be making a real difference. I love particularly Anna's blogs. Anna's great at kind of describing real examples of how she's put her research into practice through conversation analysis and things like that, and has recorded some podcasts with us as well. So do go and have a look at those if you're looking for why this is important. Not only that, but the government has committed to doubling the amount of funding invested in dementia research during this parliament. So with the government investment and real people going to benefit from this, it's a fantastic place to learn, and there's still so much more to do. There's so many improvements that can be made to dementia care, to diagnosis, and we're only just now starting to learn what's going on in the brain and how to prevent this through lifestyle. So if you're working in public health, or you're thinking about being a practice nurse, or you're working in physio or occupational therapy, these are all spaces where there's opportunity to become involved in dementia research. Thank you very much, Rebecca. That is the last of our questions, and this is the last webinar of our Careers Week. So thank you, and thanks to everybody who joined.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's been a fantastic week, and I'd just like to say that the session has been recorded, so people can look back at it on our Dementia Researcher YouTube channel, and also the different sessions that I've run throughout the week as well. And it'd be really great to see everyone at the coffee session as well at 4 p.m. And I just want to end on, I think today's session has highlighted just the different areas of dementia research. And I know there's even a study called a tactic trial, which researched the benefits of Tai Chi for those living with dementia and their carers as well, which has been led by one of our doctoral fellowships, Samuel Nyman at Portsmouth University. So I'd encourage anyone just to think a little bit differently and out the box. But yeah, and thank you again to our speakers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.